it. There we are.
Oh, this is exciting, man.
Zoom.
Where are you? Are you in California?
I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Well, I'm right. I'm in Highland Park, Illinois. So right
Oh,
around.
you are fantastic.
I'll tell you,
We're close by.
Yeah, yeah. I felt a greater affinity for the Violent Femmes more than any band from Chicago.
True confessions.
Tell me what's going on. I'm always happy for any artist who's got product, new stuff that they're excited to talk about, and it's an interesting lineup of fellas. How did that come about?
Well, it all started, Steve, because I had met Darwin Miners backstage during the appearance of Violent Femmes at the Coachella Music and Arts Festival in 2013. And we became friends, kept in touch. And then about a year ago, he got in touch with me and he said, "Hey, Victor, would you be into the idea that if I paid you some money, could you create some drum tracks for me that I could write some music to?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, Darwin, but why don't we take it one step further? And why don't I send you drum tracks that I can create for you? But also, why don't you see if David J is interested in maybe being involved in the creation of this new music?" The reason I asked Darwin that was because Darwin is also David J's manager. So we cooked up this scheme to pull David in. And then I sent Darwin some drum tracks that I had created fresh, but also I have a backlog of material here because I've owned a recording studio here in Milwaukee for about 35 years. Used to be a commercial facility, now it's just my private facility. But anyway, every once in a while, I would have some time available, so I would just create some wild drum tracks in my studio to use at some future point in time. So I started sending Darwin these tracks. He got David involved, and before long, we had 6 finished songs. And I was really jazzed by what we had because it was a complete kismet kind of an operation where I didn't realize this was going to happen before I talked to Darwin, of course. And then just in the process of getting to work with the drum tracks and what they would send back to me as far as additions, whether they be lyrics, bass guitar, keyboards, what have you, it just really started to take on a shape. And I was really encouraged by this. And it's always wonderful when you're surprised by something that you never really expected to exist in the first place.
That's art for you.
There you go.
It's spontaneity and immediacy and you know I heard that right when I Carrie sent me a link to some of the tracks and then I watched this video and I was like, wow, I'm glad I'm going to be talking to the percussionist here because it's such a percussion heavy, cool sonic kind of new record, which is heartening to me and I'm sure so many other people because it's been such a bummer of a time. And this is kind of I was going to say ethereal, but that's kind of wimpish. It's like a very ballsy kind of it's all over the place in the best possible way.
Right, and I think you're onto something when you said ethereal. I mean, I don't think that's a bad word. Certainly there was a lot of muscular percussion, and then putting David's fretless bass on it, and then just hearing what Darwin was going to do with his guitar parts, which his mission was to come up with guitar parts that didn't sound like guitar. And I think he was very successful in that endeavor. And I'm also proud of the fact that a lot of these drum tracks involve multiple percussion, sometimes upwards of maybe 2 or 3 drum sets, plus the percussion you're hearing. But I'm proud that it came through in a very uniform way. So it doesn't sound like it's too messed with or an overdub party. It really sounds like something that's organic, at least to my ears.
Just going to say that honestly, because you do hear that stuff. And as a musician myself, like when you get into any kind of studio, especially nowadays, when people are doing stuff at home and you see all the plugins and the, for guitar sounds, I had to just kind of say, just pick one, man, and or maybe two. Just
Right.
But the thing that I love about it, and I probably, if someone would have said, what would you want to ask Victor DeLorenzo, and that's, because my first sight of you and the sounds of you was, you were in sort of a punk band and you were playing a snare, and it was, but I always thought he's a real drummer anyway.
Well, I was raised and studied as a jazz drummer.
Gotcha. So
I can read rhythmic notation. I also can play different time signatures, and I'm happy that I had that initial training. There was a drum instructor that I studied with in Racine, Wisconsin, where I'm from, and his name was Joe Police, and he was a big band drummer in the 40s in Chicago. So he had a lot of acquaintances like Buddy Rich, Louis Belson, Joe Morello. I mean, you name it, he knew all those people. And I was very fortunate to be able to study with him, because he gave me not only a great understanding of the drum set, but also how it applies to jazz drumming. And also he turned me on to the beautiful artistry of the brushes, which is something that I brought to the Femmes that was very unique. And a lot of other drummers, especially in the rock idiom, were not really doing that much with the brushes. So having studied with Joe, getting my jazz chops together, and then coming to the University of Wisconsin here in Milwaukee and continuing my studies, I studied with Telly Lesbines, who was the chief timpanist in the Milwaukee Symphony. Telly's since passed on, but I've got my classical training via Telly. And then also I was involved in literature courses and also theater. And then I eventually left the university to join Theater X, which was well, I would say an experimental, or that's not really the best word to use, but it was a theater company that developed a lot of original material, and it worked a lot in the avant-garde realm.
Was that in Milwaukee?
Yes, in Milwaukee. And I came into the theater company because the person I replaced, Willem Dafoe.
I was just going to ask you.
He was moving to New York for theater and film accomplishments, and I took his place in the company. So at the same time I was working at Theater X as an actor, I was also starting to develop the rhythm section with Brian Ritchie, which we called Violent Femmes. And we called ourselves Violent Femmes before Gordon ever was involved.
Wow. Did you ever, when I was a little kid, my parents had very close friends in the Whitefish Bay area, and their son was in the band Sweet Bottom. Do you remember that group? Oh
yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, Daryl Sturmer.
Yeah. So
Daryl is a friend of mine. Yes.
Really? So their guitar player, I mean, I think one of the founding guys is Marty Appel, but he's become Menzel Appel, and he looks like a 19th century Hasidic Jew, but still has unbelievable chops.
Wow. Okay.
He's very religious, but it's interesting because what's interesting to me is any kind of I like talking to drummers, and the one because I really don't know anything, but I know when it swings and when it sounds good and when it really adds to a song. And the biggest revelation for me watching that Get Back Beatles documentary, that no matter what, even John and Paul were completely had no idea how to describe what they wanted Ringo to do in the drums, and he still looked totally perplexed. I was like, see, even the Beatles don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Well, the Beatles, I mean, they are human beings, at least as far as we know.
That's what I heard. but so
I haven't had a chance to watch that yet.
It's very good.
I know. I'm really holding back. In a way, I'm thinking I'm going to wait for the Blu-ray to be released, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of extra material.
Maybe.
But I'm just waiting. I figured I've waited 40 years already. I can wait a few more weeks.
There's
Because
no
I wouldn't be
rush.
surprised if they didn't try and release the Blu-ray and DVD version before Christmas. So we'll see what happens.
It's listen, if I have a good week, I'll get it for you.
Right.
No, but what's interesting is it just the thing I liked about it, and it's not going anywhere. There's no rush. You just kind of see a bunch of guys trying to collaborate and pulling it off with cameras in a very short window of time to deliver, and that's where the humanity comes out, because you could just see them having fun, getting pissed off. One, those codependent dynamics that exist in many bands, even the best bands, where there's like this pecking order, and
I've
George
heard
Harrison.
about that.
What's that?
I've heard about that.
Yeah. How the front guy could just look at you a certain way, and you're just like, fuck. Anyway, but so were you always, in addition to the Femmes, I mean, so were you always operating the studio when you weren't touring and playing?
Yes. I've been involved with recording since I was 9 years old. I got my first little reel-to-reel, a little Iowa with 3-inch reels from my father when I was 9 years old, and he bought it through a friend of his. My father was a barber, and he had this mutual barber friend that was involved in electronics. So one day he brought over this little tape recorder, and he said, "Hey, Vic, do you think your son might be interested in this?" And I said, "Yeah, Dad, I would love to have that to fool around with." So that's how I started recording, and I've kept recording and working on my skills as an engineer up to this day. My studio, which I'm in right now, the recording facility is upstairs. I'm in the downstairs right now.
What's playing in the background? That looks so cool.
It's on TCM. I think it's a documentary about Pearl Harbor Day.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which is today, of course.
Yeah, I woke up. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I woke her up today singing "Let's Remember Pearl Harbor."
Oh yeah. Okay.
Was your dad in the war? He's probably of that vintage.
Yeah. Yes, he was. He was, and he was stationed in Germany. He came in towards the end of the war, so he was working in the supply realm. He was working as I think it was, I forget the term that it was, supply sergeant or something like that. But
still,
he didn't see any action. He came in towards the end and stayed in Germany for a while.
Wow, it must have been fun. Was he from? I'm always fascinated with Racine to Milwaukee. Always has this really interesting, little Italian populations where both your folks.
Sure.
I mean, it's a very cool, and a lot of people don't know it. I always just say it's not unlike Chicago. It's just a smaller version with all the different ethnic groups. But Racine and Kenosha, it seems like everyone I know from there is Italian.
Yeah, it's funny. Racine, which is halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee on Lake Michigan, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, big Italian population, but also many different nationalities were part of Racine, and I really valued that growing up. I went to a Catholic grade school and high school, and I got to meet a lot of different nationalities of people.
Ben Sidran's from Racine.
Right.
Yeah.
So is Frederick March, my favorite actor.
Oh, best years of our lives. My favorite.
Incredible show, right? Incredible movie.
It's when he gives that speech. When he gives that speech at dinner.
He keeps drinking.
Yes, and his wife keeps. It's Victor. It's my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, I know. I love that movie. I just saw it the other day again too.
Oh, I'm gonna watch it.
And also, one of my favorite actresses, Myrna Loy, is in that film, and I just adore her.
How beautiful did she look?
Oh boy! And all the Thin Man movies.
Yes.
Her and William Powell, incredible.
Was Frederick March in any other movies with her? That's a good question.
That is a good question. I don't really know the answer to it. I'd have to look that up.
Well, I was psyched because when I went to UW, they had the Frederick March Theater in Madison.
Right.
So I saw all kinds of stuff there, and it didn't dawn on me, I think, until I was a senior. I was like, Frederick March.
Yeah, Frederick March from Racine, and then my other favorite actor from Milwaukee, Spencer Tracy.
I did not know he was from there.
Mhm.
It's a fascinating town. I remember walking down, and there's a historical marker that Douglas MacArthur lived there.
Oh, yeah.
And but did you? Okay, so I'll get back to the new album, but I'm excited. But
Yeah, no worries. We can talk.
yeah, no, but tell me about. Did you ever have any contact being a recording enthusiast and fellow Milwaukeeans, a Les Paul? Did you ever play with
Sure.
him?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I knew Les. I hung out with him a few different times. And a very good friend of mine, Mike Hoffman, who unfortunately just passed away at the end of
Sorry.
October. He was a confidant of mine, a fellow engineer, fellow producer, and he was instrumental in getting the Les Paul exhibit at Discovery World here in Milwaukee. There's a really great exhibit that Mike helped to put together, featuring a lot of Les's interviews and a lot of his equipment that he invented for recording, and some of his guitars. But yeah, Les was a wonderful guy. He was a very jovial character, very, very interesting to talk with, because he had a wide breadth of knowledge, not just involved in music, and just a gentleman, a very, very nice man.
I wish more people talked about what a great, I mean, I know in jazz circles, but just his playing is so much fun. And so it's always just, if I Google his name or try to find a YouTube video, it's just always some demo on the Les Paul and those great things. But the early stuff, yeah, I remember there was did you ever hear of Johnny Frigo, the violinist? He was a Chicago area guy, but they all knew each other. Probably.
You know, that's vaguely familiar to me, that name, for some reason. I don't even know why. But
he had a son that was in a band called Enough's Enough.
Oh, I remember that band. Yeah.
But no, but I love listening to that stuff. But then,
yeah,
and then
I mean the Les Paul and Mary Ford stuff. Oh, so incredible, and the beauty in that, the innovation, the sound. I mean, what an inventor, what an innovator. He was a vanguardist, Les Paul, and his I'm like you, his guitar playing, I just love it.
It's funny, it's cool.
Yeah, he always had a sense of humor, and if you would go see him when he would hold court in New York, when he had a gig every Monday at there was 2 different clubs he was at there. I forget the names of the clubs now.
I've watched I've watched the YouTube ones.
Right, but whenever Brian and I, bass player in the Femmes, whenever we were in New York, we would eventually find ourselves down there for one of those Monday night performances, and we would heckle Les a little bit from the audience, and he'd say, "Oh, there must be some people from Wisconsin here." And so yeah, he was a good guy to try and pull a joke on, but be ready, because a lot of times the joke would fall back on you.
Did you like, with having knowledge of what he did and what a trailblazer he was in recording, did you try to emulate that? Because having a studio for several years, especially as 3 decades, and the technology keeps changing, have you always been up on that?
Well, I kind of fell off the technological race maybe about 10 years ago. I found that I had a collection of instruments and microphones and recording equipment that I really knew well. So I got myself out of that rat race of trying to keep up with what was modern in the recording world, because it became, well, you had to really do a lot of research, and also it was very expensive to try and keep up with it. Sure. So once I found that I had a grouping of instruments and other machinery that I liked and was very adept at using, I decided to stay with that. Because what really it comes down to is this and this. So I didn't really feel the need that I had to upgrade the material, or excuse me, the equipment all the time, because once you have a feeling for what you want out of recording music and what you're looking for, then you don't really need new equipment all the time. It's just a matter of understanding what you have and being able to utilize it to the best of your ability.
Oh yeah, I mean, 10 years ago it was really nothing. I mean, if you still have all that stuff, it's
Yeah, I
amazing.
eventually got out of the commercial realm of recording studio, and just it became my own recording studio. So I didn't have to really feel like I had to keep up with the Joneses. I just had to be able to work to the best of my ability for what I wanted. And if from time to time I would bring someone in to record, they would realize that this was my studio and this is the way I recorded. So it wasn't, hey, how come you don't have the latest app machine, or why don't you have Pro Tools? And
Right.
there's this new microphone that's from Abbey Road this Chandler micro. I just dropped out of it. I mean, I still buy new pieces from time to time. I just bought a brand new Audio Technica microphone that I absolutely love, and also a Neumann U67, but a centennial, or excuse me, not a centennial, a ceremonial reissue of Georg Neumann's, that first version of the U67. So,
Is that the bigger mic, like the brass kind of thing, or not the
yeah,
big- the
it's
metal?
like a normal U67, if you know anything about Neumann microphones.
I don't, just the
about this
basics.
big. Yeah, it's a very fine microphone. It's a very fine audio recording microphone.
Well, until I was older, I never understood why Jake Blues or Elwood traded their car for a microphone, and John Belushi said, I could understand that, but if you're not a musician or anything, I mean, it took me a long time to say, like, you gave away a Cadillac for a really good, or just a microphone. So
Well, it's all down to what you value, right? And what you need at that point in time. I know the Blues Brothers needed different things at different times.
But it's exciting though that you can track at home, and there's the means of sharing it with people that you're creating. I think that's the best part of the technology.
Yeah.
Is that
Well, I mean, my studio is a bona fide studio. It's not a bedroom in a home.
Oh, I know.
And if you go upstairs, I mean, I spent a lot of money to work the rooms and make them up to spec, so I would have an easier time recording. But I certainly have nothing against people that record in their bedrooms or their kitchen or their basement. I mean, that's just a way of getting it done. But when I decided to put my money from the Femmes into a recording studio, I wanted to do it right. So I studied the J.L. Cooper Book of Design, and I also had a master carpenter, a friend of mine, Jody Crosswhite, come and help me build the studio. So it's a legit place.
How long did it take to put up?
Probably took about 3 months.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it was fun.
No, but I think what I meant was that in this last year and a half, I don't know if I'm sure you've been on lockdown like everybody else, but the ability.
Well, that's how the Night Crickets record came about.
That's what I was just going to ask. Tell me about that.
Well, like I said before, we had formed this partnership between the three of us, David, Darwin, and myself.
Out of Coachella, right? From that one.
Exactly, out of Coachella, our meeting in Coachella. And we finished the 6 songs. We really loved the 6 songs. And then I said, hey, you guys, let's wait a minute. I want to see about possibly getting a record deal for us, which I thought was an outrageous idea. But I knew that there was a woman named Cheryl Powelski, and she has a label out in Los Angeles called Omnivore Recordings. They do a lot of work with reissues, but they do release some new material.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured, okay, Cheryl is from Milwaukee. I'm going to call her. I've never met her before. Well, first I was going to send an email and say, could we set up a phone conversation if you're interested to meet me? And she emailed right back and said, yeah, Victor, of course. The Femmes are one of my favorite bands. I would love to talk with you. So we arranged this meeting, talked to her, told her about the project, asked her if you would like to hear it. She said, yes. So on a Monday afternoon, I sent her the record, the 6 songs. It was an EP at that time. And on Wednesday, she called back and offered me a record deal for the group. And I said, wow, this is fantastic. I mean, I've never had a turnaround this fast with a record company involved. So
I'm not surprised. When I first heard it, the best music I'm hearing of late are people who are nuanced, slightly older, in that time, that they're still putting out the greatest stuff and
right.
for themselves. And they don't want to bore everybody. It's exciting, and this knocked my socks off as well.
Yeah, Cheryl was so interested in it after, of course, she had to play it for the staff to see if she'd, get the go-ahead to work with us. But the staff loved it as well. So when we decided that we were going to work with this 6-song EP, a little time passed, and then Darwin and David and I figured, we really have a good thing going here. Maybe we should just keep going and create some more music and blossom this into a full-length album instead of just a 6-song EP. So I ran that by Cheryl, and she said, yeah, if you can meet this deadline. This was about, I think, middle of August. If you can meet the deadline of the middle of October,
wow,
to have a full album, we'll do it. So I said to the guys, hey, we have to have this done by the middle of October if we want to get this out in time, because they were looking at not only releasing a CD, but also streaming. And then in the future, an actual vinyl record would be included as well in the release. So we just got to work, and boom, 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 middle of October, we had the 13-song album mastered and ready to go.
So you have 6 songs come this call in August, right? That's it. When you hear, were any of the bandmates a little nervous? Like, oh.
No, like I said, we were all excited. We wanted to keep going. So when we got the green light to try and turn this into an album, we just put our nose to the recording and got to work. And I was just really happy. And, it was a little bit of trepidation, but I was happy when we had the new songs finished, that they not only complemented the 6 songs that were already finished, but they also carried on our experiment. And we got to go into other different areas of what we liked as far as music is concerned.
Yes.
And also it gave us a point in time where we could feature the 3 of us as lead vocalists on different tracks. So in that way, we share the burden a bit. And also we put forth this idea that it is a real band. It's not just Darwin and I backing up David J. It's a real band. So yeah, I'm really jazzed about it.
That must be exciting when because I'm sure you remember any band that you've started going back to grade school where there's that excitement, this sounds good.
Yeah.
That's
it's a kick. It's still a kick for me. And I'm a lot older than 16 years old when I first started in all this.
You're like 26, right? Whatever's the new.
I wish, on a good dream day.
No, listen, you look great. You were
Thank you.
That.
I feel good.
Good. So, well, I'm happy that. Are there any tracks that you're particularly proud of, or that there's this unanimous like, oh, I love this one song?
Well, the title track, "A Free Society," I like what's being said in it, and I also like the instrumentation and the sound of all the music that's included in that track. It was interesting going into this too, because I knew Darwin was a good engineer, and I've been engineering since I can remember. And to hear the final results of our collaboration between the 3 of us, and Darwin using his expertise to really put together a mastered recording that showcases all the strength of us involved, but also was a little bit different because none of us knew what would happen when the 3 of us started working together. So it did create this thing which we eventually called Night Crickets. But I like that it features the best the best of what the three of us do. And also to have us all being surprised by this. So it's not just, oh, this is what I usually do when I work with other people. This was more of, wow, this is the magic that came about because of our collaboration between the three of us. And in that we're very into working together as collaborators. So it wasn't just opening the Pandora's box of maybe having some disagreements. No, we really work together as a unit, the three of us. And that doesn't always happen.
No, it might never have gotten past one track, you know.
Right.
Seriously,
right.
if you made it that far, and we're so excited to call Omnivore, which by the way is the only record label I really like. Well, I just like, I think it's because Carrie Baker handles a lot of their press, but these are people, it's people I grew up idolizing, you included. You know, I haven't had the DeLorenzo shrine in my house for a long time, but but I might, you know, now that I know that you love It's a Wonder, or it's not It's a Wonder, Best Years of Our Life, you know, my esteem for you has gone up 20-fold.
Well, I started in all this as an actor, so I really have an affinity for actors and scripts and
Are you still doing
producers.
Have you been involved in theater since theater?
I haven't in a while, but I'm going to get back to it probably next year. I've got some things in the works.
The way I saw the Violent Femmes was that it was like theater. It was art, you know. It was.
Well, that's certainly what I brought to it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think the other guys came along after a while and just decided that they would follow me in that regard and bring something different to the Femmes. So it wasn't just another musical group, that it had some kind of a depth beyond that. And I think we were lucky that we had other things to offer. So it wasn't just three guys getting together making music. We also had some affinity and also a depth to our instrumental playing, especially Brian and I, because we were both interested in a lot of jazz and blues and esoteric musics, different kinds of musics from around the world. So
talk about humorous playing. I mean, not only was it fantastic, but just the two of you guys played off each other. So it was amusing, you know, that some of the just like, I just thought that it was great. That's why I love that. In fact, one time someone asked me like, well, what kind of sound are you looking for, you know, when you're, you know, recording? And I took out the song Nightmares. And I just think like, this is just the greatest sounding warm record, and your drums sounded so good. I was like, I want the snare to sound like that. But I'm happy that you're happy now, because that's
yeah, I think this the Night Crickets project, to me, I think is my favorite thing that I've ever done.
Good.
And that includes the Femmes material. Not only the sound of it, the writing that's involved with it, but the camaraderie that we have between the three of us now. I really like us as a trio working together, and I think there's probably a future involved for the three of us as well.
I think that's fantastic. It's actually inspiring, because anyone who says that the stuff that they're doing currently is their favorite ever, it's not to minimize the stuff of the past, but maybe it's been sort of the road getting to this place.
Right, and I got to develop my sound as a drummer and also as a percussionist. Plus, you know, I also play other instruments, so I'm not only just playing the drums on this.
And you sing too.
Yes, and I'm singing, and I'm a lyricist, and also I play some guitar, I play some keyboards, a little bit of bass. So I'm glad that in this trio, I'm allowed to exercise those other talents that I have.
Yeah, when I lived in Austin for a bit, and I became very good friends with a gal she's from Milwaukee, you know, Liv Mueller.
Yeah, Liv, sure.
Yeah, I love her to death. And I just remember we went and saw you guys at Liberty Lunch, and
Oh boy,
I
wow.
was as thrilled as I am now talking to you, Victor. So
Jeez.
I'm
That's a long time ago, Steve.
I know I'm 51 now. I just turned 51. I was a youngin'. I was
Yeah,
barely
talk about it.
shaving.
Talk about it. I'm 67.
Listen, man, if you look, you're ageless. You look great, honestly. And I'm very happy that you love the stuff that you're doing now, because that's, to me, the mark of a great artist is somebody who
No,
is,
I'm not sure if you're aware too, Steve. You know, I have another group that I play with, which is a duo. It's called 1913. And that's the cellist Janet Schiff and myself. So Janet plays cello, and her cello was built in Transylvania in the year 1913. That's
wow.
why we have that name. But she has a cello from 1913 and also a looper from modern times that she uses. And then I play different drum systems. And we have a number of different recordings out. I think we have 4 albums out. And we're just on the verge of, we're going to release a new record, but a new single we just finished yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Well, tell me about that. I mean, I'm in no rush. I
Well,
want to hear about
that's what
this.
it is. It's cello and drums forever. And Janet and I have been playing together for close to 10 years now. And as I said, it's just a duet, the two of us. But we produce music that is instrumental, but then there's also a few tracks that do feature some vocals. But that's another project I'm really happy about.
And so it's called 1913.
Yes, and it's spelled out. It's not the numbers.
How does she like the cello to sound once recorded? Does she want you to run it through any kind of sequencers, or it just
Well,
like
that's the challenge that we face, and especially for me as the engineer, to try and make the cello sound different from track to track.
Mhm.
I don't want to just have a go-to sound that I use all the time. So that's been fun working with that, trying to get that to develop. But
that instrument really, it kills me every time I hear it. I mean, I've played a
yeah, it's
certain way.
gorgeous.
Oh my goodness. My I wish she would. I'd love to ask her. My cousin, who's no longer alive, she was one of the principal cellists at the Dallas Symphony, and was a freaky, awesome woman. Her name was. Ask her if she knows who Mimi McShane was. Just this fantastic lady, and it just, ever since I heard Mimi play cello when I was a kid, it's always just I love listening to it. Does Ms. Schiff, does she have any favorite composers that she likes to play cello? Does she like jazz? Does she like that stuff?
Well, she loves Yo-Yo Ma, and she also loves Pablo Casals.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think those are her favorites. But Janet's a good writer and a good instrumentalist, and she, like me, also plays a lot of different instruments too. And Janet figures into the Night Crickets record because she's added some background vocals. There's some cello on it, and she also plays some keyboards on the record.
Would you two come back on one time and just talk about
Sure.
your project?
Yeah, once we get the new record finished, yeah, we'd love to come and chat with you.
And listen, I'm basically in your backyard.
Right.
You know, we could meet sometime. But
Sure.
I'm glad you told me about the
Sure, come to
1913.
Milwaukee, we'll have lunch.
Hey, I have to go to Madison. I'll go through Milwaukee soon. But
Yeah,
but listen, congratulations, and tell your bandmates I say the same. And
sure.
This was fun. I have your email. I'll be in touch.
So we're done for now?
Yeah. Would you want to talk about anything else?
No, I think I'm good.
Did you have lunch?
I just wish everybody a happy holiday season, and look for the new Night Crickets album to come out on January 21st on Omnivore Recordings.
Are there going to be, I saw a promotional video, but is there going to be anything else? Because the music goes perfect for visuals. I mean,
We're talking about some video ideas, but there's nothing firmed up as of now.
I think you guys should score a film, quite honestly.
Yeah, the music is very cinematic.
100%.
Yeah, it would work in that regard.
Well, cool. I'll I'll talk to you soon. But this is thank you for meeting a little later and
worries.
talking to me. I'm going to go back and on my next long car ride, which is imminent, I'm going to be listening to Night Crickets.
Fabulous. All right, Steve,
Will.
will you take care?
Take care.
Bye-bye.